Hey guys, I'm Bruce. I'm a noob, and I was nominated by Adam Mann to do a special video. A lot of modelers are showing their workspaces. We're all in the self-isolation, quarantine kind of thing. So for the quarantine challenge, we're going to show you my workspace, my stash, and you can get a bit of a behind-the-scenes view. If you're wondering about the hockey jersey, I'm actually originally from Nova Scotia, Halifax, Nova Scotia, and if you've been watching the news, you may have heard there was a pretty tragic event there last week. There was a bit of a shooting spree and 22 people were killed. So thought I'd put Halifax Moosehead's jersey on as a bit of a shout out to all my friends and family back in Halifax, back in Nova Scotia. We're thinking of you guys, and hope you get through this time. So without further ado, let's get going. So here's the workspace. I'm in a corner of one of the rooms in our basement. It's actually pretty nice and dry, and it's not too cold or anything. Got a daylight fluorescent above and a couple of incandescents on the bench. Okay for lighting. I'd really like to get a couple of lights sort of to my side or behind me, because I got great light from above and in front of me, but not much from behind, so it does create some shadows. So let's take a closer look and head over to the bench. So to the left of the bench, we've got a couple of these little sort of drawer trolley things that we bought for the kids when they were little for their toys. They don't need them anymore, so I'll put them to good use. General storage, I've got my Proxon case, I've got my calipers. I put my iPad there too with reference photos on it when I'm working. And then just sort of general supplies, popsicle sticks, a bit of drywall mud for Zimmerit experiments. And then landscaping stuff. So this is all the improvised, rocks and gravel and stuff from the backyard that have been dried out. And then the bottom shelf, if I can get this drawer closed, this is all the sort of store-bought stuff. So some moss and lichen and bricks and static grass. The next one we've got in the top drawer, this is all of my aftermarket stuff, and that ranges from tracks. AK, yeah, they make tracks. Well, actually, Best Models makes tracks, and AK puts their label on it. I really like those, actually. I did film a little review of those I might put up. Things like Value Gear stowage, aftermarket clamps from Voyager, and then I bought a bunch of different masks and templates for things like divisional insignia, Balkenkreuzes, numbers, things like that. Some more drywall mud for landscape bases, some scraps of electrical wire. You can use that for tree trunks if you want to. Screwdrivers and just some old testers paint in the bottom. So onto the bench itself. So it's a folding 6-foot plastic table. Not ideal, but it's okay. Got some general tools, photo etch bender, some RB punch and die sets. I do have an overhead magnifying lamp thing, which is pretty good. It's not made to mount on a plastic table though, so it does wobble a little bit. That's okay, it works pretty well. In the back corner there, just things like some skewers and things, some clay tools, again for diorama bases. Silicone brushes, I just bought a bunch of these. I'm going to try them for applying graphite to road wheels and things like that to make it look like worn metal. Toothpicks, of course, can't go without toothpicks. And then 2 of these store-bought storage units. So I like the combination of the big and the small drawers. I use the big drawers on the bottom for everything from, corks for painting figures. I found some awesome coiled copper wire for tow cables, spare blades, more wires of every variety, little cups for mixing paint, and just assorted surplus kit parts. Compass if I need to draw circles, and I tried these little Green Stuff World leaf punchy things. They work pretty well, but I think they're a tiny bit oversized for 1/35th scale, but certainly better than just putting globs of foam or whatever on your trees. So we'll try to do some trees with those at some point. Over here again, more kit parts, magic tracks, German tools, things like that, Q-tips. This is where I put all my knives. So this is my go-to X-Acto knife. You can see it's got a nice rubberized handle on it. And I've got several other handles I bought and to put specific blades on. So I've got like a saw blade, a chisel blade, if I have to, carve something off the surface. And I've got one spare blade that I bought for my RB Tools riveter for aircraft. So I haven't tried that yet, but we'll give her a shot at some point and see how it works. Pin vise, got this at Lee Valley. These are awesome. I think that's the same one Panzermeister 36 uses. Comes with a whole bunch of different bits and works really, really, really well. Love that little pin vise. The top drawers, the little tiny ones I use for everything from lead wire of different sizes, regular wire, chains, just all kinds of different bits and bobs, speaker wire. Paper clips, again, for mounting figures. Needles. So I've got some of these because I want to try to make my own glue looper. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a tool you can buy to apply CA glue, and it used like the eye of the needle, as it were, to kind of put the glue where you want it. Little bits of sponge and other things up there. These small little drawers are awesome as well for figures. So when I've got figures assembled in various stages of painting, I'll pop them in there. And I can stick any, equipment, weapons, things like that in there with the figure so I won't lose them. And then up on top, I've got my homemade static grass applicator. So that's just like a $10 bug zapper and a little cheap metal colander. Spare airbrush needle and stuff up there too. Silly putty, because you can use that for masking if you want sort of a semi-sharp edge. You can make little strings of silly putty and use that to mask when you spray. So to the right of the bench, I've got a couple of little office caddies, one for brushes. So for oil and anything solvent-based, I'm using Royal and Langnickel brushes. Have been for a while. They're pretty inexpensive. You can get them at any of the big box craft stores. And then I'm using Winsor & Newton Cotmans for any acrylic painting, so for figures and things like that. And then just a bunch of trashy old brushes for dry brushing or for hairspray chipping or anything like that. And then a couple of longer flat brushes, which are good for blending. Again, if you're doing any kind of wet blending on figures or something like that, or oils for that matter. The other caddies, kind of mostly sanding stuff, so I've got a whole bunch of different files, different profiles, round, square, flat, triangular. My go-to sanders are micro mesh. They work really well. I love the shape. So you've got this awesome small end on them. One side's curved, one side's straight, so you got a lot of flexibility in terms of getting into little nooks and crannies. You just got to watch, you don't pay attention to their grit rating because it doesn't match real sandpaper grit. They've got their own system. So micro mesh, awesome. And then I also love these little small, cheap, two-sided sanding sticks. I got these at my local hobby store before it shut down a couple of years ago. One side's a bit coarser than the other, but they're also really good for getting into little nooks and crannies. Just pens and pencils and things, and scissors and whatnot. And then droppers for paint. So got all my stuff organized there, and you can see in the back, I just bought sort of a general pack of Dremel attachments, which I actually use in my Proxxon, which is right here to the right of the bench. And then in the back corner, I've just got a little office sort of file caddy for all of my sheet styrene, sheet brass, and various styrene shapes and rods and tubes and things like that. Onto the front of the bench there, we got a little plastic cutting board for photo etch, a couple of rulers, and then onto the airbrush. Now, when I got back into the hobby a couple of years ago, I wanted to get a decent airbrush. I didn't just run out and buy something kind of crappy and cheap because I wanted to, well, I didn't want to be in a position where I could blame the tool. If something's not working, it's my fault. So I've got a Harder & Steenbeck Ultra, so this is kind of their less expensive model, I guess, certainly cheaper than the Infinity or some of the others. It does share some of the components with the more expensive Harder & Steenbeck brushes, but it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, that was just a bit over $100 Canadian, which is a steal, considering you're getting some really high quality parts in there. And of course, just the spray pot there to empty stuff out. So that's the bench, standard cutting mat, and you can see Tunisian Tiger work in progress. So of course, place to put paints and jars and bottles and things is a standard problem for a lot of modelers. So I had some scrap plywood left over in the garage, so I built myself a paint shelf, and I tried to make all the different shelf heights sort of suitable to the different types of paint bottles. So the top is just kind of catch-all general storage for stuff I have no place else to put. Hey, there's our 15 shades of Panzer Gray. I promise the video's coming out soon, guys. Just be patient. It is coming. And then, you know, Tamiya, AK Real Color, cement. So, of course, TET. But then I also do use the orange Tamiya cement when I want a stronger bond. and it's something that, you know, like a suspension or major hull assembly, sometimes I'll use that just because it does give a much, I find a much stronger bond than TET. Vallejo colors, and I tend to go kind of light and then primaries for most of my paints, and then browns and well, beiges and browns and greens and blues and blacks and metallics. Of course, can't do much without, to me, a panel liner. I picked up the gray for interiors. If you're doing like a white or an elfenbein interior, then you can use a gray panel liner, because black or brown would just be too much. Old TET bottles, one for sprue goo, so I've just dissolved some old styrene and some leftover TET, and that's awesome for filling, especially on aircraft, filling seams. And then for Tamiya putty, which I have down here in my little Lazy Susan right there, TET can be used to thin that down and smooth it out, and so for things like filling seams on figures, putty thinner is awesome, or well, TET is awesome. I call it putty thinner. It's just TET with a bit of putty that gets in there as you're brushing. Mr. Surfacer, 1000 for figures, 1500 for aircraft, and it's probably overkill for armor, but I use it anyway. I bought a bottle of Mark Fit. I didn't buy the Mark Fit Strong. I should have. Mark Fit's, it's okay for, if the decal's not going to give you a problem, then Mark Fit's fine, but it's not going to do anything above and beyond the Call of Duty for you. So of course Microset and Microsol are the two go-tos there. AK, that's the washable white. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really looking forward to trying a winter whitewash with it. I just went to our big box craft store, Michael's, and got some Grumbacher Misket. So it's just like a latexy kind of masking fluid, and it works awesome for clear parts. So for, say, periscopes on vehicles where you've got a clear vision block with, you know, a darker or a colored frame around it, but it's all molded as one piece on the clear sprue. Just dab a bit of this stuff on with a toothpick into the clear part where you want it to stay clear, and then you can airbrush or brush paint or whatever you want, and then it just peels right off without damaging the clear. So that stuff is amazing. Really enjoy it. Vallejo pigments, a whole bunch of different ones, and some of the environmental effects from Vallejo. I haven't tried them yet, except for the splash mud, but I'm really looking forward to playing with those a little bit. Next shelf down, so just old yogurt containers with all of my different thinners, so mineral spirit, isopropyl, lacquer thinner, and water. Just replenish them as needed, and that's a nice size I find to have on the bench, and they've got a nice rubber cap on them, so that's impervious to any of the solvents inside. Just some cheap latex water-based paints, and some Alclad for metallic painting, especially on airframes and aircraft parts. And on the bottom on this side, then just some Tamiya rattle can, tester dull coat and gloss coat, some Vallejo airbrush thinner, which I just spray through my airbrush after I've cleaned it and reassembled it, just to make sure everything's working okay before I dump paint into it. Some Aquagloss X20A, Mod Podge. That's the clear Mod Podge, so for like water, if you want to do a puddle or a little bit of water on a diorama. And I've got the big giant one right there for more general purpose, like sticking down static grass and gravel and sand and things. Yeah, I actually went out and bought a whole bottle of Mission models just for that Panzer Gray test. Because if Mission model didn't win, I didn't want anybody to say it wasn't because I didn't use their thinner. Some white primer, spray adhesive, isopropyl, Mr. Rapid thinner if you're doing say spraying fine camouflage patterns and you want it to, the paint to like, dry right away or stick right away without spidering, that stuff will help. The Mod Podge, some hairspray, Mr. Leveling Thinner, that magic unicorn juice. And I've got some mold release. I actually bought an Umu two-part latex mold kit from a local hobby store, again, before it went into business. Tried it a couple times. It worked okay. I'm not very good at it yet, I guess. But I tried to use it about a month ago, and the hardener, one of the two parts, had actually completely solidified in the bottle. So I've got a whole tin of mold release, only used once, and yeah, I'll have to get some more casting material at some point and give that another shot. So next to the main bench, I've got just a little secondary table. Store my oil paints there. That's of course the Winton, Winsor & Newton Artist Oils. I haven't tried any of the modeling stuff. I know some guys swear by it, and it dries matter and it dries faster. I've done a bit of playing around with this stuff, and it works fine. Maybe as I become a more sophisticated modeler, I might try some of the 502 at the young and see how that works. Next to that, this is kind of the parking lot. So I've got kits that are built awaiting dioramas, or kits that are partially built. These two, so my Stug 3 and my Sherman, are both for the same diorama, and I've got some British or Canadian. They're going to be crew from the Italian theater there. So the diorama base is really what's kind of holding me up there, but the vehicles are pretty much done, so that's some progress. I've got my LEF H18 with a wheel that's come off, so I'll reattach that. That's for my Brecor Manor diorama. I've got all the figures built, some of them painted, and again the base will be the major piece of outstanding work. And then work in progress kits, so the boxes and parts here, my Edward 109 E7 Tropical. Boy, the seam lines on the bottom of this thing are killing me. There's no locating pins, and yeah, that's 4 coats of sprue goo and a lot of sanding and some styrene inside to make a nice clean crisp edge there on the intake. And you can see I haven't done that yet on the front because it's not a smooth edge, and we've still got a really awesome seam line there to take care of. So that kind of stole my mojo on that. I'm still going to work on it. Obviously I want to build that. It looks like it'll be a nice kit when it's done. All the instructions and extra parts and stuff for the Tiger from Ryefield. And then I've got Dragon's DAC Panzer 4D partially started. I'm going to be super detailing the interior on this one, so I'm taking my time on it because there's a lot of cabling and wiring, and I'm stealing the drivers and radio operators area from the Trumpeter Brookenlegger kit, the Brookenlegger 4B. That actually comes with the driver's compartment, or a rudimentary driver's compartment, which again will need some detailing. So that's another work in progress there. So that's sort of my parking lot table. Let's get on to the stash. So this is the stash, folks. 2 shelves, and I've got them very neatly organized. The left-hand shelf, this is the Panzer IV shelf, and it's all Panzer IVs and derivatives. So we start with A, B, C, and D up on the top, E's and F's second shelf, G's come next, and I'm pretty much up. I pretty much got everything I need. Almost all the kits are represented there. There's a few of the special white box Cyber Hobby ones that aren't, like I don't have the 4D Vorpanzer and Taukpanzer, but all the mainstream kits are all there. When it comes down to like H's and J's, I've only got a couple of kits. The plan is to fill that out now. I'm undecided whether or not I'm going to actually buy a lot of the Dragon H's and early J's that should have Zimmerit but aren't included with Zimmerit in the kit. I'll probably get one. I'm not good at Zimmerit. I tried it once and it was but I don't know if I want to practice on a a $75 Dragon kit. So maybe I'll buy a couple of old Tamiya H's and J's and give it a shot on those first. But we got some derivatives down there, so Dicker Max, and of course there's a whole bunch of Flak Panzers and Hummels and Nashorns and things that need to be added to that shelf, and then a couple of Stug 4s, and again these are the ones that don't need Zimmerit. There is a re-release of their early, but now with Zimmerit, so I may pick that one up as well. The plan is to basically do a Panzer IV for Noobs series at some point, where I'll talk about all of the main Panzer IV kits, what's good about them, what's bad about them, their how they're accurate, how they're inaccurate, what you can build up with them, and there's just so many variants of the Panzer IV. It's probably going to actually be a series. But I've got pretty much everything I need now except for the Italeri G, because they re-released that, an F1, F2 G, and I may pick that one up just because I'm a masochist and a bit of a sucker maybe, but that's about the only major kit I'm missing, I think, at this point, from A to G. So that's the Panzer IV shelf. Let's move over to the other shelf, the everything else shelf. So armor cars, half tracks. You can see I got a deal on Tamiya Universal Carrier kits many years ago. Figures, so German sort of light medium tanks there, so some good kits there, like the 38T and the Panzer II, and then of course I've got 2 Panzer IIINs, both of which were part of the Schwer Panzerabteilung, so Tiger battalions, 502 and 501. Actually 501's upstairs. I was looking at the instruction for that the other day. There's the 502 kit, and then this is just a Panzer IIIJ. So I've got some non-Panzer IVs to build there, 3 Tiger kits in the stash. I picked up, got a really good deal on the mid Borgward controller tank. I'll probably just build it as a regular mid. And then the original 6252, that's got all the metal goodies inside it, so that's awesome. And then Stugs. So the 3G concrete one, I'm happy to have that one because it's actually got Zimmer molded on it. And then the F, which isn't an F because it's actually an F hull with an F8 superstructure on it. Thank you, Evan, for pointing that out. So this is the tank that didn't really exist, at least as far as I've been able to figure out. So either I have to convert the hull into an F hull or convert the turret into an F8 turret. So neither of those sound appealing, but we'll figure something out. Martyr, the old Tamiya Jagdpanther and Jagdpanther, sorry, and the Sonderverband 288 Stug 3D with the tropical filters. A couple of 148 kits. Actually, my kids bought these and never built them, so they've wound up in my stash. We may give them a go at some point. I've got the old Artillery Kangaroo down there. That should be kind of fun to build. Some spare tracks and detail sets. And then the old Tamiya British Quad and 25 pounder. And then Yuck. I picked this up because I thought, oh, it's Canadian, awesome. But I have not heard a lot of good things about that kit. That's the Sexton 2. DS tracks, they're actually, I'm assuming they're broken in the box because they're actually, each track is in 2 separate pieces. And so I'm going to have to go out and buy some aftermarket Canadian dry pin tracks, which is terrible, and I guess there's some fit issues on that too. So yeah, we'll build it, but a little disappointed. And then last shelf, I've got 6406 there, the one of the earlier Tiger 1 late kits. I'm just actually using that for spare parts on my Tunisia build. And then I've got a couple of planes down there that at some point I might build. So that's the stash. Last but not least, we talked about the airbrush. We have not talked about the compressor. So a lot of guys in their quarantine challenge videos have been showing they have kind of, inexpensive, not high-end airbrush compressors. I don't even have an airbrush compressor. I have a contractor's compressor, an old Porter Cable contractor's compressor. I do a lot of home improvements and DIY stuff, and so I've got air nailers, and this is great to power those. And you know what? It actually works fine to power an airbrush. Of course, I can adjust the pressure. It's got the bleed valve on the bottom to get the water out of there. Works fine, but boy is it noisy, and boy does it hop. It skips along the floor like nobody's business, which is why I've got it on a carpet there, because it'd be 6 feet across the floor after 30 seconds of spraying if it wasn't. So really loud, somewhat mobile, but it does the job for now. Yeah, eventually I'll get an actual airbrush compressor, so I don't have to wear earplugs when I don't actually wear them, but I probably should because it's pretty loud. But anyway, we'll get a real one at some point, but that does the trick for now. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me for a quick tour of my bench and my stash. Hope you found it interesting. Thanks to Adam Mann for the challenge. My turn to challenge somebody, so I'm going to challenge 2 people. First and foremost, I'm going to challenge the man, the myth, the legend, Cohen, aka Michael Campbell of the Cohen Scale Modeling YouTube channel, and of course one of the admins at the Warts and All Facebook modelers group. So Michael, over to you. And not to be outdone, Steve Mottram from Moddy's Military Modeling channel. Steve, over to you, my friend. Again, stay safe, guys. Wash your hands, practice social distancing where you can, and for the love of God, don't inject household cleaning stuff into your body. Please don't. I'm Bruce, I'm a noob. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.